to describe what Tung was working on, it's difficult because it's mathematics. We're interested in enormous graphs. An enormous graph might contain a little graph. We want to understand what difference it makes if you look at graphs that don't contain one particular little graph. Choose your favorite little graph and ask, what can you say about the big graphs that don't contain this little graph?
One of the central open problems in my area is the Erdős-Hajnal conjecture from 1977. In any large system, complete disorder is impossible. I mean, you're supposed to find some sort of coherent and orderous structure in the system. So given any very large system, can you actually find some sort of a nice structure within them? And it's very, very well known to be very difficult. Even for the partial problems, it's already very challenging.
These are complicated theorems. The proofs are 10, 15 pages long. We've made very little progress on it until Tung came along and he's making big steps on this conjecture. These are problems that I thought I could not solve, and Tung's been solving them.
The fact that I got to Princeton was like a miracle. I feel, incredibly honored to be surrounded by the Princeton community. And I'm not overstating, I think this is the first real award that I have received in my career. And I feel incredibly honored to be awarded the Jacobus Fellowship.
Well-being is a term that philosophers use to just refer to how well someone's life is going. It just refers to whatever is in a person's best interest. The ethical significance of an individual ending up with a certain amount of well-being at least partly depends on that individual's attitude towards risk.
So he starts with the thought, which I think is natural to a lot of us, different people have different attitudes towards risk. Interesting question. What if you and I are in a society together and figuring out how to distribute resources, and we have different attitudes towards risk? How should we organize society so that it satisfies both of our needs?
It's going to concern policymakers, so decisions that affect society at large, but also doctor that needs to decide on behalf of some patients. And there's a question, well, what is it to act rationally in conditions of uncertainty? I sort of take that question and explore it in the domain of ethics.
No way, that's a philosopher's term of art. How much welfare do you have? You don't know. That's a really hard thing to say numerically. Philosophers use these models not because they think the world really is so precise and mathematical, but when we make things precise and mathematical, that sometimes illuminates some more general principles.
Policies are going to affect people that exist today, but also people that will exist in the future. We are going to have to make decisions on behalf of these people, and we're going to have to make either more risky or less risky decisions. I think there's a lot to be gained from philosophers making use of methods from other disciplines, but also from other disciplines to take seriously the questions of philosophy.
I see my work at the intersection of sociology and demography. I look at social integration through the dimensions of health, the labor market, and other social outcomes. And in other work, I'm particularly interested in the intersections of race and nativity and how they produce differential patterns of health among immigrants. New York was such a major destination for many migrants. That's perpetually in the imagination of Americans as a story of immigration. It's really a story of New York. And also the inclusion of Caribbean migrants who had a presence in New York City going back to the late 19th century and early 20th century.
These sorts of historical analyses are becoming more common as the data sets become more common in an era when things are digitized, released into the public domain. She can study the 1920, 1930 original census records and code them up however she likes. And so she does that with a great deal of style, ability, and creativity.
I use theories from sociology and historical literatures But I use demographic methods to observe these questions of integration. I'm able to then think about what integration looks like and how does that compare with the standard story of European immigration to the United States. Because we've seen that place matters a lot for individuals' health, this is just bringing in more rich data to better understand existing disparities that we observe in the United States by place.
A lot of times students get bogged down and they focus on coefficients rather than trying to tell a broader story. So she starts with the broader story and then uses quantitative research methods to make more precise what the story is and tell it with more detail.
When I was applying to a Ph.D., there was sort of a shift in the paradigm in robotics research. Imagine in a couple of years, you can go to the store and buy a robot. So you can tell it, go and put the dishes into the dishwasher. Can you make the laundry? Can you make the bed for me? A lot of times the human give these instructions, but instructions can be ambiguous. The human may not fully present the intent of themselves.
One major challenge with language models is that they're not always very reliable. And current approaches are pretty brittle. If you change the objects a little bit, or if you change even the lighting conditions, or if you change the color of the background, the system can fail pretty easily. So he's been working on approaches to improve that reliability and generalization.
Human can give like suboptimal or imprecise demonstrations. It might teach the robot the bad thing sometimes, but we're really the first people to think about this in the context of robotics. We can teach the robot to do different things. We can show the robots, oh, this is how you should pick up this dish and how you should put it in the dishwasher. The robots will start understanding what the human meant on a higher level.
I feel like something that's impressed me throughout his PhD journey is the ability to have some very neat theoretical assurances, but at the same time demonstrate the kind of practical usefulness of these theoretical ideas. I personally find very satisfying, like having theory meet with practice and see the fruits of both.
Changing the daily life of a lot of people, the disabled, the elderly people, people in need, and also people working in very dangerous situations. I think that's something I really look forward to keep working on in the long term. I was looking for more focus on the theoretical and the fundamental questions, and I think Princeton is a great place to think about these questions.